My girlfriend of 3 years packed her bags for another man, then looked me in the eye and said, "If it doesn't work out, we can talk." I realized I was just her backup plan, so I didn't beg. I sold our Thailand trip tickets, blocked her number, and moved on. 8 weeks later, she showed up at my door crying for a second chance, then froze at another woman's jacket hanging beside mine and the 2 mugs waiting on my kitchen counter. My name is James. I'm 31. I work as a project manager. Nothing glamorous. I organize things, keep timelines, make sure people show up when they said they would. I'm the kind of person who remembers your coffee order and checks the restaurant reservation twice because it's embarrassing when they lose it and you don't have the confirmation email. Sarah and I met at a mutual friend's birthday. She was a freelance graphic designer, creative, funny, the kind of person who made a room feel a little more alive. We moved in together after a year. Shared lease, shared groceries, a trip to Thailand already booked for April. Things were good. Not perfect, nothing is, but real. Consistent. The kind of relationship that felt permanent because it was built on small, dependable things rather than big gestures. I want to be honest about something, though. Around 8 months ago, she started using a particular word for me. Predictable. Not always harshly, sometimes it almost sounded affectionate. "You're so predictable, James," with a small laugh. But it became a word she used a lot. Predictable, reliable, safe. I thought those were compliments. Looking back, I understand they were comparisons. About 6 weeks before the conversation in the living room, things shifted. She came home later. Texts got shorter. Her phone stayed face down when we were together. I asked her about it once. I said I'd seen a name come up in her notifications and wanted to know if things were okay. She didn't get angry. She went quiet for a moment, and then she said, "You're being paranoid, James. It's exhausting." I let it go. I told myself I believed her. I don't think I actually believed her. I think I was hoping I was wrong. So that's who we were. 3 years, 1 lease, a non-refundable flight to Bangkok, and a relationship I thought was stable until it became clear I was the only one who still believed that. It was a Tuesday. Nothing about it was different. I was reading on the couch. Sarah was on her laptop. Her phone was sitting on the coffee table between us. It buzzed. I wasn't looking for anything. I wasn't checking on her. The screen just lit up, and I happened to be looking in that direction. "Leo, can't stop thinking about last night." I read it once. Then I looked back at my book. I didn't pick up the phone. Didn't say anything. Didn't go to the other room to process it. I just sat there. After a few minutes, I got up, went to the kitchen, and made myself a cup of coffee I didn't want. I drank it standing at the counter. Then I went back to the couch and picked up my book again. I waited 3 hours for her to tell me herself. She didn't. The next day, she sat down across from me and said she needed to be honest about something. She had feelings for someone. His name was Leo. She didn't want to string me along, those were her exact words. String you along, as if the honorable thing here was the conversation, not the 3 years before it. She said she was choosing him. And then came the part that stopped me completely. "If it doesn't work out in a few months, we can talk." She paused after she said it. I think she expected me to feel relieved. Like this was better than being simply left. Like I should be grateful she was keeping the door open, as if a door with a return policy was something I should want. I asked her one question. "Is that what you want?" She said yes. I said, "Okay." She looked at me for a long moment. I think she was waiting for more. I didn't give her more. I didn't tell her what I'd seen the night before. I didn't cry, didn't explain, didn't make a case. I just looked at her and waited for the conversation to be done. She left that evening to stay with a friend. She said we'd sort out the lease and the Thailand trip later. I sat on that couch for a long time after the door closed behind her. The apartment was quiet in a way it hadn't been in years. I sat there and I started thinking back. Not to build a case, I wasn't constructing an argument in my head. I was just replaying things I'd filed away and told myself didn't matter. The birthday dinner in November. I'd made a reservation at a restaurant she'd mentioned wanting to try. She arrived 20 minutes late and left early. Some friends were in town, she said, people I'd never heard of before that evening. She kissed me on the cheek when she left. I finished the meal alone and told myself this was what adult relationships looked like. People had lives, she was just busy. I paid the check and left the table set for 2. The weekend trip in January. Planned for a month. She canceled 2 days before a freelance deadline had moved. I said it was fine. I reorganized my weekend. I didn't tell her I was disappointed. because she looked stressed and I didn't want to add to it. And then the one I keep coming back to. Mark's party, 4 months ago. Someone asked how long we'd been together. Sarah laughed and said 3 years. Can you believe it? And put her arm around my shoulder and said, he's so safe, so reliable. Everyone laughed. I smiled. I stopped smiling that night on the couch. Safe. Reliable. She had been saying those words for months, and I had been hearing them as affection. I understand now she was measuring me against someone else. Someone unpredictable, someone who texted things that lit up a phone screen at night, and every time she called me safe, she was quietly completing the comparison. She just never told me I was losing it. And here's the part that stayed with me the most. I hadn't argued when she called me those things. I'd nodded and moved on, because I thought stability was something she valued. I thought being the person who showed up was enough. I was wrong about what she was looking for, and I had been wrong about it for months, and she had never once corrected me. The morning after she left, Mark texted. Qley called. Priya sent a message that just said thinking of you. Dave went quiet. They had all heard from Sarah. The version they got was that we had grown apart, that it was mutual, that we just wanted different things. No mention of Leo. No mention of the offer she'd made me on her way out the door. She had gotten to them first. The story was already set before I'd said a word to anyone. I was just a ghost in the version she was telling. 3 days after she left, Sarah posted on Instagram. Sunrise photo. The caption read, choosing myself and what makes me feel alive. Grateful for every step forward. 100 comments inside an hour. Friends, coworkers, people I'd never met, telling her how brave she was, how this was her moment, how proud they were. I saw it through Qley's story reshare. I didn't comment. I didn't screenshot it. I read it, put my phone face down, and didn't pick it up again for the rest of the afternoon. In Sarah's version of this story, she was brave. She had chosen aliveness over comfort, growth over predictability. The unnamed ex-me, though she was too tasteful to say it was the thing she had outgrown. A chapter she had honestly, gracefully, thoughtfully closed. It was a good story. It wasn't false in any way that could be directly argued. It was just inverted. She hadn't grown away from me. She had been comparing me to someone else for months, and when the comparison tipped, she left. The honesty she was taking credit for was a backup plan, offered with a straight face, like I should thank her for the slot she'd kept open. But that wasn't what reached the friend group. What reached them was the sunrise photo and the growth narrative, and nobody had thought to ask whether Leo had also been choosing aliveness when he sent that message the night before she ended our relationship. I wasn't going to correct the record. That's not how I'm built. The sub-post, the group chat rebuttal, the here's my side message sent at midnight. So, I didn't. I went quiet. I stopped posting. I stopped updating anything. I cleared out plans I'd made and remade them alone. She had told the story. I decided I didn't need to live inside it. So I became exactly what she'd written, just a ghost. Present enough that no one worried. Invisible enough that her name stopped coming to me. I want to be clear. I wasn't running surveillance. I wasn't asking anyone to report back. Everything I know about the next 2 months came through friends who cared and mentioned things because they thought I should hear them. About 6 weeks after the breakup, Qley mentioned that Leo had missed Sarah's birthday dinner. He'd had tickets to something. He told Sarah not to make such a big deal out of it. Qley said this without editorializing. She just passed it along and I said I was sorry to hear that, and we moved on. Then Dave texted me in early March. He'd been out at a bar and spotted Leo there with someone else. Not a friend, a woman, standing close, introduced easily, the way you introduce someone you've been spending time with for a while. Dave said Leo caught his eye, gave a vague wave, and went right back to his conversation. Dave said he didn't know what to make of it. I said I appreciated him telling me. I didn't do anything with that information. I didn't call Sarah or text her or bring it to anyone else. I just held it the same way I'd held the notification on the coffee table months before as something true that didn't require me to act. Then one evening, about 8 weeks after the breakup, my phone rang from a number I didn't recognize. Local area code, no contact attached. I let it ring through. The voicemail was 26 seconds. It was Sarah. I could tell immediately, and I could tell she was calling from her work phone because of the way she said her own name at the start. The way you do when you're leaving a professional message and realize halfway through that this isn't that. I know I don't have the right to call. I thought I was choosing something real. I don't know what I was thinking. I'm sorry, James. She didn't ask me to call back. She didn't say she wanted to try again. That was the whole message. I listened to it once. I sat at the kitchen counter for a moment, not doing anything particular, just sitting with it. There was a part of me that felt something close to sympathy, and I want to be honest about that too. Not enough to call back, but enough to understand that what I was hearing was a person who had believed their own story until they couldn't anymore. That's not nothing. It's also not my problem. Then I put the phone face down and went back to making dinner. I want to be honest about what that voicemail was and wasn't. It wasn't an apology that changed anything. It wasn't proof of some grand scheme. It was just a person who had told 100 people she was choosing aliveness and growth, who had called it brave calling from an unlisted number 8 weeks later to say she wasn't sure she'd been choosing anything real at all. 4 months earlier. Choosing myself and what makes me feel alive. 8 weeks later, 26 seconds, no audience. I thought I was choosing something real. Those weren't the same story. She knew it, and she called anyway because she had nowhere else to say it. I saved the voicemail. I didn't play it again. I didn't call her back. I know that sounds simple, but it wasn't nothing. There was a part of me smaller than I expected, honestly, that still wanted to pick up the phone and say, I know. I hear you. That part of me had been doing that for 3 years. Absorbing. Smoothing things over. Making it easy. Old James would have called back within the hour and said something like it's okay, even when nothing was okay, because that's what he did. I didn't do that. I had a work event that Friday. A department thing I'd already said yes to 2 weeks earlier. I went. I wasn't performing recovery. I wasn't showing up to prove I was fine. I just had somewhere to be and I went. That's where I met Emma. She was a colleague of a colleague, one of those introductions that happen at the edge of a party, near the food table, where it's easier to talk than stand quietly. We ended up talking for about 40 minutes. At the end of the night, she said it was nice to meet me and I said the same. We exchanged numbers. Nothing dramatic. Nothing calculated. 2 people at a work event, just talking. Before the weekend was out, I dealt with the Thailand tickets. The airline wouldn't refund, the window had closed months ago. I listed my seat online and sold it for a bit under half price. I left Sarah's ticket alone. That wasn't a message. I just wasn't responsible for it anymore. I deleted the airline app. Stopped checking Sarah's profile. I didn't announce any of this to anyone. I didn't tell the friend group I was moving forward. I just started filling in the space she'd left with things that were actually mine: extra hours at work, the gym, a book I'd had on the shelf since the previous year. I stopped waiting for something to change. Not dramatically. Not all at once. I just stopped. Emma and I had coffee twice before she said, clearly and without ceremony, that she'd like to see me again. I said I'd like that too. We had dinner the following week. 4 weeks in, she left her jacket at my apartment. She'd worn it over on a Thursday evening and left it on the hook by the front door, and by the weekend it was still there and neither of us had made a thing of it. I noticed it Sunday morning and didn't move it. I want to explain why that matters, because I know it sounds like a small detail. I hadn't had anyone leave anything at my apartment since Sarah left. And the fact that Emma's jacket was on that hook, and I wasn't treating it like a situation to manage or a milestone to define, that was different. That felt like something. I wasn't moving fast to prove a point to anyone. I was just living. About 2 weeks after that, Priya texted out of nowhere. Hey, just so you know, Sarah mentioned your name a few times this week. Thought you should be aware. I thanked her. I didn't ask what had been said. I didn't change anything about my plans. I didn't know she was coming. That's important, because what happened next could sound arranged, and it wasn't. It was a Sunday afternoon. Emma was over. We hadn't made any particular plans. She was reading on the couch. I was in the kitchen. She'd made tea earlier. 2 mugs. One on the table, one still in her hand when she'd set it down. There was a knock at the front door. I opened it. Sarah was standing there. She'd thought about what to wear, not formal, just deliberate. She looked like someone who had rehearsed what came next. She started before I fully had the door open. I know I have no right to show up like this. I've been thinking, and I just... She stopped. Her eyes had moved past me, to the hook beside the door. Emma's jacket. She looked at it. The sentence she'd been building didn't come back. She just stood there in the frame. Then Emma came out of the kitchen, holding 2 mugs of tea. She noticed the open door, noticed Sarah, said quietly, "Oh, sorry," and stepped back toward the kitchen without making anything of it. The 3 of us existed in the same space for 4 seconds, maybe 5. Sarah looked at me. I don't know what she was expecting. Maybe she thought I'd step outside and close the door behind us so we could have the conversation she'd prepared. Maybe she thought I'd be alone. Maybe she'd been imagining this version of the visit for weeks, and in that version the apartment was dark and quiet and I was exactly where she'd left me. I wasn't angry. I want to be clear about that. I wasn't performing anything. I wasn't standing in that doorway feeling clever or satisfied or like I'd won something. I was just still the same kind of still I'd been sitting on that couch the night she left. I said, "I'm glad you're okay, Sarah." That was all. She looked at me for a moment. I could see her searching for the rest of what she'd come to say. It wasn't there anymore. The prepared words had dissolved somewhere between Emma's jacket and 2 mugs and the fact that none of it was staged and all of it was real. I took a small step back. Not toward her, not as a gesture, just back, the way you move when a conversation is finished and you're returning to where you were. Into my apartment, into the space behind me that was already full. The door swung in on its own weight. It didn't slam. It never slammed. That's not the kind of door it was. It just swung and the latch clicked, soft and final, and that small sound was the last thing that needed to be said about a 3-year relationship and a backup plan and a slot that was never going to be filled. I stood at the door for a moment. Then I went back to the kitchen. Emma was at the counter, not looking at me, giving me room to be a person about it. She asked, without turning around, if I was okay. I said yes. I meant it. She handed me my mug. We went back to the couch. Neither of us said anything else about it. The weeks after that were quiet in a different way than the weeks after she left. The first silence had been absence. This was just regular life, the kind I'd apparently forgotten could exist without managing around something. Mark and Dave started texting more. Not check-ins exactly, just actual conversation, the way we used to talk before everything became about navigating the group dynamic around a breakup. Dave mentioned he'd had a long conversation with Qley about the whole situation. He didn't go into detail. I didn't push. About a month later, Qley mentioned Sarah had moved. Not far, a smaller place, closer to where she worked. She said it the way you share a practical update, not a verdict. I said I hoped Sarah was settling in okay. I meant it. Nobody in the friend group asked me to give her another chance. Nobody brought it up as a possibility. I don't know if they'd quietly decided it wasn't their business, or whether enough had shifted that the question felt settled. Either way, no one pushed. I noticed something else around that time. The group dynamic had changed, not dramatically, not in the way where people take sides and announce it, just quietly. The energy in the group chat was different, less careful, like a few people had stopped trying to keep something balanced that no longer needed balancing. Qley and Priya know the voicemail exists. Not because I played it for them, I didn't, but because Qley asked at some point whether Sarah had been in touch, and I told the truth. I said there had been a message. I left it at that. Qley nodded and didn't follow up. I noticed, sometime after that neither of them mentioned it to Sarah. I don't know if that was a choice they made or if it just never came up. But Sarah never called the work number again. She never texted my regular phone. Whatever she'd been hoping to find at that door, she hadn't found it, and she stopped looking. I still have the voicemail. I know that might seem strange, like I'm keeping it for something. I'm not. I'm not saving it to show anyone. It's not going to be part of some future argument. I keep it the way you keep a timestamp, not for the content, but for what it marks. For the moment when something finally finished. 26 seconds. A person who had told the world she was choosing something real, calling from a number I didn't have, to say she wasn't sure she had been. The backup plan had backed out. The safety net had turned out to have a hole in it. And the person she'd left behind, the predictable one, the reliable one, the safe one, was still here. Still fine. Already somewhere else entirely. I posted this on Reddit because someone in another thread asked about closure, and I said I didn't believe in it, and someone asked me to explain. So here it is. Some doors, when they close, say everything the conversation never could.